Well, welcome to the show, Aaron. Really looking forward to having you on. Going through a whole heap of football things. You've obviously had a long history, particularly at AFL, in a number of roles, and I'd love to dive into that. But first off, I'd love to chat about your current role at Carlton. And it's got you listed here as a coaching and performance manager. Could you describe what that role entails and what that sort of day to day or week to week looks like for you, and what your sort of key indicators of the role are and doing it well?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, firstly, thanks, James, for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity to come have a chat and talk all things footy and coaching. So, hopefully I can provide a little bit for the listeners. But I guess my role is sort of, I guess, this is for sort of a few clubs now that have sort of started to set up the way that we are, and I guess that the idea behind the design of our structure is to allow. There's so much in a footy program these days, and it's really to allow Vossi to be impactful, with people and spend time where he can have the greatest influence. And it's probably a bit the same with Brad Lloyd as well, that there's so many parts to, as our GM, there's so many parts to, AFL men's, VFL men's, AFL W, VFL W, next gen, list management, father, son. There's so many parts for him to be all over. And it's, so probably my role is looking after the day to day of the footy program. So my key responsibilities are facilitating, leading our leadership and culture program. So that works across our coach development, but also our player leadership program, and then I guess our wider cultural piece, how we integrate that through our program. I assist with the facilitation of our training sessions, and then work within our team to obviously plan those. There's some day-to-day footy operation stuff, but then just I guess making sure that our program runs smoothly, and then I'm connecting all of the pieces, and that's across footy, our footy department within our coaching, our analysts. That's our wellbeing team. That's our high performance staff. And that's our medical program as well. So my job's a little bit of a connector to work across all those to ensure that our programs are running and executing the way that we need it to do.
And with your role, what do you sort of find the most difficult part of it? Like, what's the real challenging points do you find to sort of make it really work well in your mind?
Yeah, look, the biggest thing for us is team efficiency. Like, it's how we operate across departments, and that's one of the things that we looked at last year, and you look at, whether it be, training design, whether it be player durability, whether it be how we're communicating, across different parts of the footy program. It's how we operate efficiently as a team. So, it's sort of the greatest challenge is being able to get all those moving parts and get them operating together. But it's also, I guess, the greatest reward and the strength of our program is that we've got fantastic people that are able to, play their roles within our team, work together, and get the best outcome for the players in the program.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I really actually, I love what the role you have in terms of looking at the program from a sort of broader aspect. And I love, because when you're, I guess, at your level, it's a lot better than what I would, but you're only dealing in small margins, aren't you, in terms of performance on game day, I guess. So a role like yours is can you walk us through how you think about, trying to find that 1% here or 1% there? Is that something you're constantly looking at and just trying to think we could do this a little bit better, which ultimately will help you to win a game? How do you look at that role, Aaron, in terms of, getting the on-field aspect right during the season?
Yeah, I think when you reflect on it, especially the way, I guess, that our season finished last year, like there's no bit that's too small to go after.
Yep.
Everything adds up, and everything has an impact on what the end result is. And for us, being second year together versus first year coming in where you're teaching a new program, you're getting staff to work together for the first time. We certainly feel second year in, we've been able to be a lot more specific, a lot more pointed. So we learned a lot from year one in regards to the areas that we need to go after. So certainly over this pre-season, we've been able to I guess, be more pointed and really feel that we're hitting the areas that we're able to make those sort of small gains. But there's a number of things, and some of it is just the evolution of time together. Like being able to build deeper relationships, to get to know people, to connect on greater levels, to understand what people are working through. Understand the program that we want to run, and for the players to sort of take time to adjust and play to that. So it's a number of things, but we certainly feel that we've been able to be a lot more specific and a lot more pointed going into year two.
You've obviously watched your senior coach there, Vossi, for a few years. You obviously were at Port Adelaide for a number of years there as well. Could you walk us through a little bit about his development from your aspect? And I know he's the head coach there, and I'm sure you can talk as much a little as you want. But talk me through how you watched him from afar in terms of his development, how he went about it, and ultimately got a new role and had a really good solid year last year back in the saddle of a senior coach. Is there anything you could share with us that you noticed and why he's back into the position he is now?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one because obviously being close to Vossi, I've been able to see his journey from when he arrived at Port Adelaide 7 or 8 years ago, after coaching Brisbane and spending a little bit of time in the media. So I guess when you're coming from a head coach, you come into the role, with a very different skill set to probably what he developed through his time at Port Adelaide. But I just think that during those 7 years, I think he had at Port, there was not a time when he wasn't trying to further develop himself to become a better coach, a better person, a better leader, and even with the credentials and experiences that he had. He never left any stone unturned in trying to find ways to be better, and he really extended himself in regard to branching into education and looking at ways to educate and develop learning environments, and then also adjusted and worked with some really good people around training philosophies, training environments as well, and just the body of work that he put in, and his role obviously grew from a midfield manager role through to sort of I guess almost a head of footy type role under Chris Davies, and working with Ken at Port to be able to run their program and take on a lot wider management responsibilities as well. So just the work that he put in, he never just sat and said, I deserve another chance. He rolled the sleeves up, and what he's doing now is a body of work over 7 to 10 years that he's put into developing himself. And I think it's a real credit to him, the way that he's gone about and almost gone back to school and continuing to learn and be curious.
Vossi obviously jumped into senior coaching out of basically his first coaching role was a senior one there at Brisbane. In today's environment, from your view, what sort of, if you were a coach, and let's say, probably the most common pathways that ex-AFL player goes in coaching and then progresses through the ranks, how many years do you see an ex-AFL player, we'll stay with the ex-AFL players, to coach as assistant before they could step into a senior role? Is it minimum? Like I know Chris Scott, I think, did a couple back in the day. There was a time then when there was a few coaches who jumped right into the deep end. But what do you see today and then sort of the years? Do you have a feel for that, or is it just case by case, depending on the coach and the situation?
I think it's really based on what the club that's appointing the coach is looking for and what their needs are. You get some coaches have done a much shorter apprenticeship, but could be more advanced and more ready based on education, study experiences they had as a player, just different personalities, mature and develop at different rates. In looking at it though, I came into the AFL industry without an AFL playing background. My point of difference was as a teacher and an education background, and I certainly think for the people that are wanting to, they might be coaching. I started off coaching local level in the Geelong Football League. Went on and coached Falcons in the NAB League and progressed through a pathway. But once I got into the AFL system, for me, I've always had a point of difference in regard to bringing learning environments, coach development, being able to set up, I guess, the way that our coaches coach and assist with making them better teachers. So I've always had a point of difference. And I think for anyone that's wanting to come into the AFL or elite environment in any sport, I think that's the real key, is to understand yourself and know what you bring. Like,
Yep.
as a club, we don't need 10 coaches that are all the same with the same skill set. And that's the trap, I reckon, that some people fall into, that they go, well, geez, Vossi's a great coach, I want to be like Vossi. But you're not that. So just understanding yourself and being able to bring what your point of difference is. But if I look at it wider from, I guess, to your question around the AFL coach, I mean, I really like, and most of them from afar, because I've only had little pieces do them, but I really like, Craig McRae, Justin Longmuir, that type of model where they've done the apprenticeship, they've, a bit like Bossy, they've got a body of work where they've coached a variety of roles. You see them all the time at different education forums and workshops and PD trips that they're doing. I had a little bit to do briefly with Justin around some work that he was trying to do when he was at Collingwood around just understanding that learning environment better, and some people that we connected through. And I just love sort of the way those people I guess have put the work into developing who they are, developing their philosophy, and taking time to develop and be ready for the role. And Ken Hinckley used to always say, you get what you deserve, and I think that those guys that have put in that work into getting themselves ready, I think it's no it's no fluke when you see those two and Vossi and the like, doing really well in the job now.
And you're obviously a really good case study. You obviously, like you mentioned, didn't have the AFL background. Do you see in today's environment it's more accessible for coaches who haven't played AFL to make it to the elite level, or even into state league level as well, like Stanford, the Waffle, or VFL down here? So do you reckon in today's environment is more opportunity for that, or hasn't changed much in the sort of decade plus you've been in the system?
No, 100%. I think I can't remember the stats off the top of my head now, but I think when I started, there was less than 10% of AFL assistant coaches hadn't played an AFL game.
Yep.
And I think it crept up at one stage there to at least double that. So you look through most clubs now, and you sort of have a head of development coaches, people that have had pathways, people that are ex-teachers, people that have come out of management backgrounds. I just think it's more now that clubs are looking for people that have a diverse skill set that can come and do the job that you're after, and bring in something different. I know we went through a process over this off season to put on two new development coaches, and the two people in Brad Ebert and Tom Lonergan that we ended up appointing and have been fantastic additions to our club. One, they're great people, and we've worked with them previously, so we knew their character. But and they were both successful and fantastic AFL players. But the last 2 years, they've gone away and developed a skill set and educated themselves and studied and done various roles, both inside and outside of footy, to develop a skill set that then made them really appealing for us. So when we wanted to bring them in for the roles that we wanted them to play, they had more than adequate skill set that we're looking for.
Yeah, no, I can definitely vouch for Domsey. He was obviously down at the Falcons last year, so it was great to, I guess, work with him down there and in my coaching role. So it was good to see him get into the AFL level. I'd like to move on. Do you have any, with your role and the broad role you have, do you have sort of like any key principles for better and more consistent football? Is there anything that's sort of guiding you in your decisions that you might have on paper or just stuck with you when you make decisions?
The key principles, for us, things that we really reflect on, go after, is just making sure we've got that consistency of day and consistency of sessions. So for us as coaches, it's that really strong planning and organisation, making sure that we know what we've got ahead of us, what roles we're playing. Our attention to detail just needs to be really strong. So whether that's out for a practical session or a coach or member of our footy department sitting down with a player to work through, just to know that the details there and the area we're going after is clear. Really important for us that everyone plays their role. No role's too small. Everyone sort of has a valuable input into what we do, and we need every part working together. And then at the end of it, we talk about being curious. I touched on before, but just always being open to improvement and reflecting on our own practices and behaviours. How do we go? What we do next time? That sort of stuff. So that's sort of, I guess, the key principles and cornerstone for how we operate. There's things in regard to game day decision making, all that obviously comes into it as well. Another part, I guess, for us is the strength in relationships. It's really important for us to have those good people around to make sure we've got an environment where we can challenge each other, but feel free to have conversations when they're needed to have. And then from a player point of view, you look at it, and one of the things that most clubs go after, and we certainly do, is just what elite habits look like. It sounds boring, but players just need that consistency as well. You need their ability to have elite habits day after day, and to really build and develop resilience through there, and then the cornerstone of around the people and relationships as well.
Is there any common coaching mistakes you might see, and then you might talk to coaches and say, well, that's probably something I'd avoid, or something you might be able to share with us that you see that comes up?
Yeah, look, there's I don't know if there's sort of especially across different levels. Like, it's so what we have access to. We're obviously extremely fortunate to have. As I said, I've lived the other life where you're trying to get the footies clean enough to see them at night and training under lights, and you've got the howling wind, and you've done a full day's work and all that sort of stuff as well. So I understand the challenges behind different environments. But
yep.
In regard to mistakes, I guess the biggest thing is, for us, there is a science behind it. So the mistakes for us is not providing the right training environment. So we have certain measures that we know we need to hit from a data point of view, physical point of view, but also then creating the right drills that expose players to what it looks like in games, and I guess to bring it back to NAB league or a country footy level, you probably look at it from a skill development versus a game training sort of type model. So there's certainly space in it for skill development, but I'm certainly more, I guess, less, I guess, your cone to cone, sort of call them junk food drills that they feel good while you do them, but they're probably not doing much for your development, for your progress. But there is a space for them, but probably more. We certainly got exposed at Port through a guy by the name of Carl Woods, who's worked with Port Adelaide for a number of years, and I guess he's educated us around what representative learning design is, and ability to create an environment that contains key information that is present in a match environment. So we look a lot around constraints-based training. So I guess less touches, more decisions, more complexity, trying to put players in situations that they would see in games. So certainly, from a if you had an hour to do a training session as a local coach, you've got to put some value on. They might have less kicks, but the decisions they've got to make, the information they've got to take in, and what they've got to process to be able to execute with the 5 kicks they have. I certainly believe that carries a lot more weight than being able to get 20 kicks up and down to a cone without thinking. So that's certainly from again, not saying it's a mistake, but that's certainly my philosophy and the way that I like to look at practical training.
We talked a little bit of Vossi earlier. Is there, and you did mention Craig McRae, Justin Longmuir. Is there any other coach that comes to mind as a sort of a successful coach, and is there a reason behind that?
Look, there's certainly 3 that stand out to me, and probably knowing a little bit of their backstory too helps.
Yep.
It's I think obviously any AFL coach that's doing the role has been very successful and certainly has some fantastic strengths and attributes to be able to do that. But there's certainly three that stand out for me. But I'll probably look at, again, you talk about the people that you work with a little bit, but, I look at Ken Hinkley from a little bit different point of view as well. Like Ken's been in footy for forever. He's probably the best knowledge of the game of a person I've worked with, the best feel for the game. But I guess what I learned most from Cam was just around the importance of people and creating those really strong teams around you. And he's just fantastic and at that, strengthening relationships and just developing and giving people trust around him. Like there's a number of us that have been through his programs, and Vossi, myself included, that are better coaches and better people for working with him. So being able to have that, I guess those takeaways from him as a coach is very different to the PD and the work that you see these other, I guess, younger coaches are starting off and they've done the work to get in. But I also look at, again, another guy I worked with back at Port who's back again there now, like a guy like Josh Carr who came out of playing and, jumped between Port and Freo and he's back at Port now. But in between, went and did a stint in the Sample and coached North Adelaide to a premiership and went back and learned how to coach and manage his own team and look at the wider parts of being what's involved in being a senior coach. And by all reports, he's come back into Port Adelaide now and he's really developed and continued on his coaching journey. So I think there'd be a lot of stories through and a lot of great people that have done some fantastic things to get in the roles that they're now in.
Is there a player that you've seen who you feel really exceeded expectations on them? And this might be, you might have been part of the seeing them get drafted and then you thought, oh, this is a bit of a pick, we'll see what happens here. Is there a player that really stands out for you that's just got way more out of them than people probably originally thought they might get? And how do they do that?
Look, it's always a hard one. You sort of, the draft every year, it's an exciting time for everyone that, Fox, they'll sit down now and do it over a 2-day thing. And the Herald Sun spent about a month
talking about it, trade rotor, all the rest of it. That's it.
Who's coming through the draft? So by the time, the players get drafted, everyone's got a comparison, or gee, this kid's going to be like this player, and it's really challenging because you've got to get to know the individual and their story and their attributes, and they do take time. But so it's hard to sort of go, well, who's exceeding expectations? Because, like it or not, you do go, okay, this kid was pick 5, so you've got a really high expectation of what their ceiling should be. But I guess a couple that jump out to me, and they're not, I guess, wouldn't necessarily say the best players that you've gone through and coached, but a guy like Tom Logan, who was at Port with us, he signed 10 one-year contracts, and he was just such a tough, brave, courageous player. But he was just such a good teammate and such a good club person that every time his 1 year was almost ticked over. Like, we just couldn't do without him because of what he brought to the club. And I think he's a great story for players to learn off, that it's not necessarily always based on talent. As I said, he was just such a good clubman, such a good teammate, and someone that everyone wanted to play with. And as coaches, you develop a real large amount of trust in those people because of the role that they go out and do. And I guess another one from where I'm at the moment, a young player by the name of Jordan Boyd. So, he's unfortunately broke his foot last year, and he's had some challenges again through this pre-season, but he's got such enormous upside. I remember having the conversation when he played his debut game last year. It was 12 months to the day that he made his senior debut at his home club in Spotswood. And for someone that was probably thought geez, my draft time's over. I'm never going to get drafted. Played a few games in the Bulldogs VFL. I got taken in the mid-season draft. To then be playing his senior AFL debut 12 months later, I just think they're fantastic stories. They give so much hope to a lot of players out there that may be late developers that may have missed out and want to continue to try and find a pathway into the AFL. So, I mean, they're two stories that stand out to me that you probably both them and the club probably weren't sure where they'll still get to, but on the other side, I mean, you have the guys like Walsh and Cripps and Boak that are high draft picks. Yep. But you can also and come in with a huge amount of talent, but you can also see why they're the best in what they do. Like this amount of work they put into themselves as players, as developing their game, as people, as leaders. They're just they make your day easy to go to work because they're just leave no stone unturned and go after every part of getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably saw that firsthand at the Falcons last year with Jai Clark, who went in the first round. And you used to see those sort of guys. They're all probably a bit similar, aren't they, in terms of their easy to coach and just their work ethic. You can sort of see why. And obviously they've got a heap of talent. And hopefully, Jai can follow similar footsteps to the guys you've mentioned. A few more questions for you, Aaron. I really appreciate your time, and I know that you're a busy man. But is there any books or documentaries you might recommend that you come across that might be worth checking out as a coach?
Yeah, look, there's certainly, I guess, one that I guess have shared a fair bit with coaches sort of during my journey. There's a book called Made to Stick, and it's by two guys. Chip and Dan Heath, the author's name is, but it's Made to Stick, and it's basically it's a really good educational book for coaches in regard to how players or students take in information and what they remember and what they don't. So I think it's really good for anyone that's wanting to develop their teaching. It's certainly one that I guess I've used with a lot of coach development. Probably the most recent one that I worked through last year was a book called The Act of Leadership by Dan Hasler. It's been floating around a little bit, been quite a popular read, and I guess one I really enjoyed because it's more of a working document than a book that you just sit down with the highlighter and go through and make notes. There's a reflection opportunity at the end of each chapter, and it just allows you to assess where you're at as a person and what your philosophies are, but also makes you think about the environment that you're in and how you can lead and make decisions when you're put in different situations. So there's certainly two. Outside of that, I'm probably you like everyone, you go through stages where you get all these books and you think, what do I end up doing with all this information? So I'm probably going down a bit more the path now. Like a recent book I read was Unscripted by Ernie Johnson, who's the NBA host on TNT with Charles Barkley and Shaq, and that type of book where it's a really good read around how you can develop as a person, what your values are, what your character is, relationships you build, and just basically teaches you to be a better person and through his life journey. And that was one that I really enjoyed, and I probably more angle a little bit to those types of books at the moment. From a documentary sense, The Playbook, which was a series on Netflix, is one that I really enjoyed. There's an episode in there on Doc Rivers from when he was coaching the Celtics through their championship back in 2008, and he shares the story around Ubuntu and what that meant for their culture and how they behaved in the environment they created. And they're certainly the things, I guess, now that I guess at the stage in my career that I go after a lot more around the management of people, the environments you create, the culture you live in, find that I get quite a lot out of those types of reads.
Perfect. If I gave you a banner that you're going to pop up and every coach listening is going to have it on their door that they're going to see day in, day out, what would you have written on that banner?
Oh look, I'm not much of a catchphrase guy. I sort of as again when you read through things, you'll highlight and you sort of take bits away, but it's certainly more. Probably more for me. It's not taking it from anyone or just be more around do something for someone else or be a good teammate or that type of thing, because that's again that's the environment that you want to work in. That's the workplace you want to turn up to, whether it's sport or not. You want good people around you, and you want to develop a culture where people are looking out for each other and trying to make each other better each day. And so it'd be certainly something, around that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for giving us your time and coming on the show and talking some football. All the best for this coming season, which is coming up quickly, and look forward to catching up and chatting soon.
No, thanks, James. Again, really appreciate the invitation to come on, and enjoyed chatting footy, and look forward to listening to others in the future.
Cheers.